gonna open the meeting now. And could you, we'll go through, wait a minute. We're gonna open the meeting and, we're gonna go through, what happened to my agenda? There it is. What happened to my agenda? Here it is, okay. Call to order, 6:05. And we're gonna approve the minutes from April 6th. Can we do that? Even though-
I don't know if everybody, let's see.
Well, Michelle wasn't here. And the other one,
So the three of us,
yeah, we can approve it,
yeah.
right?
Motion to approve the minutes of April 6th.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any old business to come up? Nothing? New business? We're gonna be having the short-term rental bylaw by the Berkshire Regional Planning Committee. And, well, you're up, whoever.
Great, okay. I'm gonna move these cords a little bit. Good evening, everybody. This is the first time I've been in Adams, the planning board, so just a little background. My name is Brett Roberts. I'm a principal planner for housing at Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. So we work in all 32 towns and cities on a variety of housing issues, and one of those is short-term rentals. And so we were requested to be here to talk kind of through some short-term rental issues. I'm going to give you a little bit of background at first, short-term rentals kind of at large, and then I want to have a small discussion with the board members and with the public if you're willing.
Yeah.
And then kind of we'll go from there, kind of next steps.
Okay,
So,
sounds really
don't want
good.
to take too much of your time, but I think that's where we'll go. I'm going to slide this way so everyone can see my slides. So first, like I said, what we're going to talk about is the short-term rentals. And why we're talking about this is really for a few reasons. As you all know, in the Berkshires specifically, the housing market crisis post-pandemic has really been a hard challenge. And part of that is also with short-term rentals. Another piece of the puzzle here is that in 2024, the state legislature and the governor signed and passed the Affordable Homes Act. And what that did is it made accessory dwelling units by right throughout the Commonwealth, which very generally means that folks can build an accessory dwelling unit on their property. And one of the ways that you can regulate that as a town is to either allow those to be short-term rentals or not. And so that's a part of this equation for housing as well. And as we all know, the Berkshires are a cultural destination. We are very similar in some ways with the Cape. You think of the Cape as like a place where you go rent an Airbnb. That same thing happens in the Berkshires. I think sometimes as locals we can forget that sometimes. Then also just the pressure on local emergency services. There's been some cases where there's been an emergency at a short-term rental, and how the people renting communicate with the town and emergency services, that can kind of break down sometimes. So we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page when it comes to what is allowed and what is not allowed when it comes to short-term rentals.
Is there any way you can make that a little bit bigger so the smaller print we can see?
Yeah, I can send this around so you can see
okay,
there,
good.
but this is probably the best I can do right now.
I think I'm going blind.
Sorry. We'll do a short-term rental 101. So what is a short-term rental? Mass Department of Revenue defines a short-term rental as a non-hotel, non-motel, non-bed and breakfast establishment where an operator rents out at least one room or unit through advanced reservations. It's a lot of jargon, but generally speaking, that is a short-term rental. So we're not talking about established hotels, established motels, established bed and breakfast. It's any of those things. It's none of those things, I should say. It's generally 31 days or less. So once you get above that 31-day threshold, we're actually talking about a long-term rental. That can be defined by the town though. So most towns have either 30 or 31 days is their limit. It includes things like entire apartments, entire houses, cottages, condos, bedrooms in a larger home. All those things, if they're rented out through advanced reservations, could be considered a short-term rental. This does exclude things like tenancy at will. So if you've signed a year lease and the year is over, but you're going month to month, that does not count as a short-term rental. And like I said, any month-to-month leases, any timeshare properties, and bed and breakfast homes. We can get into the definition of bed and breakfast establishment versus bed and breakfast home, but those don't count as short-term rentals. I'm going to get to one more slide about the definition, then I want to take questions on this because this can be a little bit confusing. So right now, the current short-term requirements for everybody in the state of Massachusetts is that all operators and intermediaries must register with Mass DOR, which includes that they receive a registration number and they have to pay state taxes. And they have to obtain a certificate of registration for each property for rent. And it must be posted at the property, and a copy must be given to any intermediary. So if you're renting through like Airbnb, that copy of the DOR registration has to be given to Airbnb, for example. They have to follow all applicable Commonwealth rules and regulations. That is for everyone in the Commonwealth, whether your town does or does not have some sort of short-term rental bylaw, regulation, so forth. So are there any questions about the definition of short-term rentals? Maybe why we're having the conversation? I'll let the book, I'm going to call the public.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, great.
Well, it's a tricky definition.
Yeah,
So what if someone rents an Airbnb for 35 days?
yeah, great question.
Not a short-term rental?
Great question. So technically it's all about the registration as well. So if you're registering through like an Airbnb, I think by definition that would be considered a short-term rental, but the definition's tricky and there's a lot of gray area in this.
Yeah.
So that's all going to have to be fleshed out as a community as you kind of get into this. But you point out a good point, lots of gray area. Any other questions about the definition?
Well, the only thing I have is sprinkler systems,
Yeah,
right? I know hotels have to have them
Yep.
and bed and breakfasts and stuff.
yep.
But what about homes like that are gonna be just are we gonna make them have to put in a sprinkler system, or is that something that's up to us?
It's a great question. It's kind of unclear to us at this point, but we're going to work with you to make sure that we have that answer by the time the bylaw
Okay,
is
that's
kind of in
good.
front of you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this has changed over the course of the last 2 years, right? Is with the Affordable Housing Homes Act and a variety of other things. And in some communities, say yes, that should be done. Other communities don't have that on the books. So we're going to try to work with you to make sure you have a clear bylaw so the folks in Adams know what to expect
Okay.
about that. Just want to do a few more things here on short-term rental impact before we get into our conversation. So, a lot of times we don't have data around what a short-term rental actually means for a community. Thankfully, in the last year, the UMass Donahue Institute put together this study called Building Homes, Building Futures, the State of Housing in Western Mass. And they came up with some really interesting data points on short-term rentals in Berkshire County specifically. So this is some math, so follow along. Short-term rental average daily rate in Berkshire County, so what you would pay for a one-night stay in a short-term rental in the county, is about $329. That might be a little bit high if you've looked at the prices kind of in North County versus South County. We do believe we have two kind of different markets, but that's the average across the county. Your median gross monthly rent in the county is about $1,073. Again, people in South County would say that's way too low. Some people in North County would say that's way too high. This is just the average. If you do the math on this, you only need to rent out a short-term rental for 3.3 days to make the same as you would for a full month's rent for a full-time resident. So, and just to show you where we stand on the state level, about 3.5 days is the median number of reservation days in Berkshire County. So people have already kind of done this math, market, supply and demand here. But you look at this, Nantucket, Dukes, this is the Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. Barnstable County is all the rest of the Cape. We actually have a higher rate than the Cape even. 3.3 days of a short-term rental to equal monthly rent. So again, these are not perfect numbers. This isn't going to be true for every single short-term rental. And it's not to say short-term rentals don't have a really important impact on the local economy, right? We have a tourism-based economy, and so these are an important part of the tourism-based economy. But it is just to show you the impact that they have on our communities, where if I have a if I have an apartment, it might actually be easier to make money if I do a short-term rental versus a long-term rental, a full-time resident. So we're trying to balance those two things when we talk about short-term rental policy. So with that, I'll be quiet here, and I want to hear a little bit from you. I had a conversation with one of your board members and some of the town staff, but what concerns do you want to discuss in this short-term rental bylaw? What's kind of front of mind?
Okay, my concerns are protecting neighborhoods. So for instance, if someone purchases a home and they're renting it year-round as a short-term rental, how that might impact the neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
When people buy homes in a neighborhood, I think they're pretty much think that it's gonna be for a residence
Yeah.
and that their neighbors are not going to be renting out year-round.
Sure.
Maybe people buying homes now expect that, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanna alleviate, I don't wanna have any problems. I wanna alleviate those problems before they even start.
Yeah. That's a good first one. Protecting communities, protecting neighborhoods, kind of keeping the feel of the neighborhood, right? You want people to live in a place. You
Right.
don't want it to be just abandoned half of the year.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
Yeah, my big question would be there is, like with a rental long-term,
Mhm.
you know, somebody renting out, and usually we've got, in our bylaws, they have to have like 2 parking spaces
Yep.
per person and stuff like that, you know, when it's being rented. If you got a short-term rental, say you get some, like she was saying, somebody
Yeah.
gets, and they get 5, 6 people.
Yeah.
You expect 5 or 6 cars to park
Yeah.
in, if you only have 2 parking places?
Absolutely.
Well, how do we
How do you
go
manage
through
it?
that?
Yeah, I know there's a short-term rental near where I live, kind of right behind me. And over the weekend there were like 8 cars there, and I was like, I should have looked up my local bylaw. I should see if that's allowed. But yeah, that's like, you see that pretty often. Is you might have multiple families coming in from multiple places to
Right.
stay at a place. So
Right.
parking's something that you can address certainly with a
Yeah, and that would be in our bylaw,
Yeah.
that'd be right up, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And so then that also becomes who's going to be enforcing that?
Yeah.
And how do you enforce it on the weekend?
And how do you, and, you know, does the town have the capacity to enforce, right? You know, you're one of our larger communities in the Berkshires, and you do have some capacity.
Well, we have our building inspector,
Yeah,
and we have the health department also.
yeah. And
But they're pretty much not available on the weekend.
Right.
So, you know,
Who do they call? Would it
Mhm.
be the police?
yeah, so these are all things that we can dive into, and I have an
Okay.
example of a bylaw I want to show you before we leave. But
Okay.
do you have any concerns of what we're?
Inspection processes.
Great.
So that they meet minimum standards.
Yeah.
For Airbnbs or short-term rentals don't have any inspection criteria.
Yeah.
Whereas monthly rentals or hotels
Mhm.
or bed and breakfasts all have inspection requirements.
Yeah, we had a very similar conversation to this in Sheffield, and we had some bed and breakfast folks come. They were a little bit worried about the conversation, but what I learned from them is they're inspected quarterly. Each quarter, the fire inspector comes, the health inspector comes to make sure that all their licenses and permits are up to date. But Airbnb folks, they don't have that quarterly inspection. And so for the bed and breakfast folks, they want to be on equal playing field with these folks, right? And I think that goes into health and safety, the inspection process, making sure these units are inspected and they're safe for folks to come and stay in Adams. Any other concerns? Like, I mean, we can, you know, fire code was one, noise around short-term rentals is another that comes up quite a bit. Also your accessory dwelling units. If you want new accessory dwelling units in Adams to be made short-term rentals to allow that, we can also talk about how that might fit into a bylaw. If you don't mind, I'll open it up to the public too.
Go ahead.
Are there
Open
any concerns you have about?
I've got a question for the
Yeah.
board. Has anyone on the board stayed in an Airbnb or a Vrbo or any other short-term rental?
I have not.
no,
It sounds like you're trying to regulate things that really aren't issues. And the reason I'm saying this is I don't have an Airbnb in Adams, but I do have one in another town. And I actually have a shared driveway on that property. And my next door neighbor just thinks it's wonderful because all the people that come are very quiet. They're usually gone all day. They're not here to stay in the house all day. And they're very respectful and pleasant when they see them. I do kind of take a little bit offense to your 3.5 day number because I want to put that in perspective. Of those 3.5 days, let's say that I'm getting, how much? $1,073? Okay, so I can get $1,073. I don't even get close to that. But let's say that I did. I'm paying 5.9?
Yeah, something like that.
5.9% of that to the state of Massachusetts. I'm paying 6% of it to the town of Dalton. I'm paying $150 every time someone stays to a cleaner. And then I'm restocking. I'm going in and doing laundry. I'm making sure that there's bathroom supplies and kitchen supplies, and I'm doing things that I wouldn't do for an apartment. So that significantly cuts down the profit. But the other issue is, let's say that I could cover the same I would get for a month's rent in maybe 10 days. I'm lucky to rent it for 10 days because people come on the weekends. People don't generally come during the week. My weekday prices are very low because I'm hoping that when someone comes for the weekend, I can convince them to come a day earlier, stay a day later. There are times that people are there during the week, but generally it's weekends. I mean, I really think that you should probably be reaching out to people in Adams who actually have Airbnbs and Verbos. Let's not forget Verbos. I do more business with Verbos than Airbnb. I think you should be reaching out to these folks and maybe even their neighbors, because I really think that the people that come and stay at my property are much lower impact than long-term tenants are and would be. And there are 6 of us from Adams going to Worcester at the end of the month, and we're taking 2 cars. And that's been my experience too. I've never had more than 3 cars at my house. They all fit in my driveway, but I've never had more than 3 cars. Generally it's 1 or 2 cars, and even when it's several people, a couple different households, they carpool.
I'll just mention too, I think it's a great perspective to bring to the table, and I want to be clear, by no means are we trying to attack those who have short-term rentals or change, we know there are good actors in this space, and again, like, these numbers are so averaged across a very diverse geography of Berkshire County, right? So by no means, I think that's a great experience to bring to this conversation.
I also think Adams charges, if I'm not mistaken, Adams charges the full 6% allowable by state. Am I correct? Does anyone know this? For tax?
I have no idea.
So,
That's actually part of the issue. Yeah, there's so much misinformation about that too, where the towns might not know exactly what
is
they're
the town
charging.
collecting the 6%?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I believe they are. So I'm just gonna, for the sake of argument, say that the town of Adams is collecting that 6%.
Yeah, I hear your question,
I'm
and
gonna-
you got some really good ones, but a number I heard was 45, that we had 45 short-term rentals in town. I don't know for sure, I don't have a list of who or whatever, or how I'm getting in contact with these people.
I found 16.
What's that?
I found 16.
State registration, if you go on the state webpage,
Yeah.
state has 45 short-term rentals in Adams, registered.
And that's current this year registrations?
Question?
Go ahead, Sandy.
So if I can continue the conversation with you, Kathy, why then do you prefer to do Airbnb over a long-term rental, over a month-to-month rental with tenants?
I initially started it because I wasn't sure how long I actually wanted to do it, because I wanted to list the house. And so I was just gonna do it temporarily, and then I decided not to sell the house, and I have it's a two-family, and I have family members on the other side. Which they have no problem with the short-term people. And I just decided to continue to do it. And so the reason I asked about the taxes is Dalton collects the full 6%. A town is allowed to collect up to 6%. And the platform, and when I say platform, I mean Airbnb and Vrbo, they collect that money and they send it. So there's not even a question like, oh, maybe Kathy Foster won't send the money. It doesn't matter, I don't ever touch the money. The town of Dalton, for me just renting out that one little apartment for maybe like 10 to 14 days a month. Some months in the summer and October a little bit longer, some months, March I had nobody at all, the whole entire month. So it varies, but the town of Dalton for the entire year last year got more money in taxes from my rental than they even got for my real estate taxes. And my real estate taxes are quite high. So that's huge. That is found money. And you know what Dalton does to make sure that I'm doing a good job? Nothing. They do nothing. Nothing at all. They just collect their money and do nothing. And the way it works on these platforms is they have algorithms. And if I'm a good host, a super host, they have different words for it. And they have ways of ranking you, like how quickly do you respond to people? What's your cancellation rate? What are your reviews? Reviews are a huge thing. So as long as I do everything well, I'm way at the top. And when you say I want to look at a house, somewhere around Dalton, mine will pop up at the top because I'm super rated. But I haven't had any inspections. I just do everything well because I want those good ratings, because those good ratings get me the good guess.
Right.
And
And I
that's the way
agree
it
with
works.
that.
If I had bad ratings, I wouldn't get good guess. I either wouldn't get guess or I wouldn't get good guess. And at some point I would say, well, I'm not making a living doing this. I can't even support the house, so I gotta just stop it.
But what do people rate the,
Cleanliness, communication.
so that's
Location.
different than what we would be talking about as far as inspections, okay? I believe the board would like to bring inspections up to the same level as landlords. That
Okay.
landlords have to meet,
And that's a good idea.
and the landlords have to
But last
meet.
month, that wasn't what was said. Last month, we were talking about tripling the fees for the short-term rentals.
Last month was an open meeting, it was our first meeting that we had
Okay.
probably in 6 months since the last meeting we had about this.
Okay.
And I think we were
So
a little
fresh
all
start today.
over the page. And that was the reason that I requested that someone from Berkshire Regional come and help us with this. We have a lot of information and we have a lot of different ideas. I think we need some guidance.
Then let me tell you how I feel. I feel like they should be regulated, and they should be regulated at a minimal level. That there should be the same inspections that apartments or any rentals get.
That's kind of what we're saying.
I like what David said, that you would do it annually because you wouldn't do it at, in between people.
Well, we just want to make sure that everything's up to code.
But I
For the
think
people
when you
coming
start
in.
getting into regulating things that are already regulated, like traffic and parking and how many people per room.
But that's
That's normal.
Regulated.
That's all part of how, if you buy a 3-bedroom house or a 1-bedroom house or a 2-bedroom house. And that's, I feel that there should be some limits onto the number of people that can be in the units. Now, whether that's done through Airbnb or what, but having, 20 people crammed into a 2-bedroom house is not really appropriate. And having 8 cars on the street, that's not appropriate
And it
in
could
my
happen.
mind.
Okay,
So-
but you're just jumping at the wild outliers.
Well, we have to take the
So-
good and the bad.
So the
It's just
state
like,
says-
it's just like the one good tenant, the one good long-term tenant that you have has to pay the price for all the bad tenants that you have because they don't pay their rent, they destroy, they this, they that, then the next thing. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. And David can even tell you, doing inspections, that there are some people that still don't have smoke detectors in their units. Okay? So, you know, we need to do our job here too and make sure that people who are renting are up to code. If they're gonna have kids that are under 6, they gotta be deletted. We gotta make sure that that's all done. That's state law. That's,
No.
yes it is. Yes, it's
If they
state law.
live there.
Okay, let's let someone else have a chance to talk.
I think he's had his hand up for a while. I don't know.
Yeah, so my name is Peter Wagner. I very deliberately moved to Adams just over 3 years ago. And for the first 4 months, I stayed in a series of short-term rentals. First one was through visiting nurses. The next 2 were through Airbnb. And I spent a lot of time studying which places were listed and which platforms and what the prices were. And then I bought a house. Now I bought the house next door that I rent out to people on a long-term basis. So I have some experience renting from short-term rentals. I'll also say that as a person who cares about this town, and as someone who's struggled to find housing, there's a shortage of habitable housing in this town. I do lose sleep over the fact that a lot of the habitable housing in town is taken up by short-term rentals. That does bother me. I'm not sure that the solution would be to tax or regulate short-term rentals out of existence. I think that would be very bad for tourism, very bad for economic development, very bad for employers. But like, boy, I'd love to personally, but I think that would have way too many bad effects. But I would urge you, when you think about what it is that you want to do, to start with what exactly are my goals? What problems do I want to address? And then seek the minimal burden that addresses just those burdens and not any others. Because what concerns me is that Adams is a struggling community. And I don't think we want to create too many additional barriers to small businesses or to people coming to town to do things, which is what some of these, we're talking about small businesses that do short-term rentals, and people use them for tourism or because they're moving to town or getting a job or something. So I would just urge you to think very carefully about your goals and then tailoring the bylaw that you generate to those goals, because I don't think it benefits anyone if you get too ambitious. That'd be my ask. If I can be helpful, please let me know how I can help you.
And that's why I think that's a great point, and why we started with kind of what are your concerns, what do you want to address with this, because quite frankly, across the county, you know, for example, Great Barrington is a really intense short-term rental bylaw, right? They do inspections, they have quite a bit of requirements for short-term rentals. There are some towns that have no short-term rental bylaws, and that works for some towns as well. And then you have some, you know, Williamstown's a good example of having a really minimal bylaw that it requires some inspection, but it does not say a lot. It's like, I think it's a total of like, you know, 4 small paragraphs in that. So I think that's what, you know, BRPC is going to advise you on, is like listening to your concerns, and trying to find that best middle ground of, you know, addressing this. By no means are we saying that we should tax or register or, you know, regulate these out of existence. It's more of what is the planning board's kind of concerns and how can we best address those, while understanding that this is a huge part of our local economy, and we want to make sure that we get the best of both worlds here.
Yeah, because my concern is we don't have anything right now, nothing in our zoning on this. And I do think you have to have some kind of regulations, some kind of safety for the neighbors, and it's something we need. I mean, so we can control it just a little bit. We're not trying to make it so it's going to be harder for you. I'm not talking about the taxes or any of that stuff. That's up to the town. You know?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are there is there a list of, or is there an informal list or any anecdotes about bad experience that have happened with Airbnbs in Adams?
I don't know, because we just started this in June, so I haven't heard nothing. We don't know, there could be some out there that aren't registered, not being checked out, might not have smoke detectors or anything like that, and say there was a fire and there's no smoke detectors and somebody died or something in the fire.
Right.
Who's that for?
And the no smoke detectors, to be clear, like, am I positive that every place that I rented here in Adams had smoke detectors? No idea, didn't look, don't remember. And that there hasn't been a fire, also not a relevant anecdote.
Well, we
Because, just to be fair, like, I am asking for anecdotes, but like, that no one has died in an Airbnb that caught fire in Adams is not
Well,
relevant.
we don't know that.
I can guess, because there's not been that many people that have died in house fires in Adams.
Yeah.
So like, I think we can say it hasn't happened, but doesn't matter because safety is important. But for the other stuff that's easier, like the overcrowding and the parking, knowing how often that happens and if there's anything specific about that, I'm just saying that might be helpful to you and to the community. But I'm not on the board, so I don't get to say how you should proceed, but I do think that figuring out exactly which elements you're looking for, and I'd focus on the things that like are either invisible, like and important, like smoke detectors, or making a very concrete list of actual problems that you'd like to address.
Okay.
So Airbnbs or short-term rentals in Adams, state has 45 of them registered. We can probably account for maybe 50% through Airbnb or whatever rental outfit they're using. The other ones, we have no record of or no knowledge of. And the state register doesn't give, they give streets, no addresses. So we don't know where the properties are. So we have no way to police it. So whether we go to a police register to see how many complaints were at this registered residence, we can't do that because we don't have a number.
I suspect that some of those are going to be inactive.
Could be,
And
yes.
I have some personal and familial anecdotal evidence for that. And there's going to be a bunch of inactive ones. And
There
it's
could
also
be, but
probably some that
they register with the state every year. So it only shows to us that they're active.
And that's been a really big piece in some South County towns is, having a really basic, not cumbersome registration process where you can just say, here's my state number, here is where this Airbnb is or where this Verbo is or however it's marketed, so that the town has the ability to match up, okay, all of these have registered, but we might have 10 that are registered with the state but not with the locality, and that then becomes part of the conversation. But so the registration piece is, a part of that potentially, so that inspections can happen and you can match it up with the state database. That's an important piece.
Yes?
I think part of why they may not give you the actual address is because on Airbnb, the people who are renting out a room or an apartment or whatever, they don't want just anyone to know where it is.
Well, if
You don't find out where it is until you've actually paid.
A lot of them with Airbnb give you the address.
Not until you've paid.
He's saying in the States.
Yeah.
They don't, they really don't.
But the
They-
state registry doesn't give any street addresses.
Right,
They
what
give
I'm
you the street,
Yeah.
but not the number.
But what I'm saying is, you can't go onto Airbnb and find out that such and such an address is an Airbnb. It doesn't give you that unless you're actually gonna rent it. It's protection, I'm assuming, for the owners. So maybe that's why they don't list that, but it does seem like that would be useful information for the town to have, but it would probably need to be kept private, is my guess. Because it's not the same as an inn. If I rent out one of my bedrooms, I don't particularly want anyone who goes onto Airbnb all over the world to know that I have a bedroom I'm renting out. Because I don't want them knocking on my door at 3 a.m. saying, can I rent your bedroom?
Take all the fun out of it.
Yeah, right. The other thing I just wanted to say is that it is important to think about the income to the town that would come from this. And I said last time that I think it's really important that the bylaw not be so restrictive that people are discouraged from doing it. And I did look at the Williamstown bylaw. I don't remember it very well, but it was quite scaled down, as I remember. And I wonder if it would be helpful to, to talk to Williamstown to find out, has this worked for you? I know they've also adjusted it over time, so maybe, maybe from talking with other towns, we could get some input as to what they think has worked. Like, I don't know which other ones are.
Hence, that's why we have him.
Yeah.
I know, but you haven't talked a lot about the other towns that you worked with.
So
I'm really curious what is happening across Berkshire County.
So the Williamstown,
Not in South County, because
well,
we're
that's
not
the
South
thing.
County.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And the numbers here, that cannot be true in Adams.
These numbers are really
I know.
an average across the
Right.
county. I only use these as an illustration of like, this is kind of what the
Sure.
data is showing us. I totally, like, I wish I could pay that much in rent,
Right.
right? Like, I totally understand this argument that these are not accurate, but this is what the best data we have, and that's why I'm showing this data. And you're right, you're not South County, and this is a different situation. Williamstown is a great example, and what I have here, and I don't even feel like passing it out now because I think this is a better conversation that's happening, is kind of a summary of what a lot of South County towns are doing. And I use South County because they're the ones who really have kind of spearheaded this effort in the county, only because of the nature of their economy, right? So, but I'm not going to pass this out because I think this is a better conversation we're having, and I can come back with a more formulated version for you. I do want to just mention too, one of the key pieces to local economies, of course, is short-term rentals and tourism. But a true impact that we see in Berkshire County is that folks can't find year-round apartments for rent. And that means that you can't have a worker at, XYZ place because of that. Even in our office, which, a professional office, right? Like, it's really hard to attract people only because there's not places to rent. And part of the conversation in South County right now is how can we make sure that we're balancing the need of our labor or workforce as well as the need of our short-term rental, like economic driver, right? So I just want to make sure that we're clear that, like, absolutely we don't want to drive short-term rentals out of the market in any way, but we also need to make sure that our towns are actually, working towns that can have people to work in them, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the balance that we think about when we're trying to strike this conversation. But by no means are we trying to drive short-term rentals out of the market.
People that live here and will work here and will spend money in the community here year-round, how do you balance that with people who come for 3 days on the weekend?
Yeah, exactly. And I totally understand that this is a very sensitive conversation. These are, I know people who their extra income beyond Social Security is having a short-term rental, right? Like, I totally get that. And that's why these are so sensitive. But to not have the conversation is probably just as dangerous as going all the way and regulating everything to the fullest extent. So I just want to be aware that we get
I just want to make one point too, is that North Adams, I think it was 24, they came up with their bylaw. And just a couple of weeks ago, there was an article in the Eagle about they're coming up with tighter short-term rental rules proposed, and there's got to be a reason for it. I got the article right here, if anybody wants to read it. And maybe there was a short-term rental where they did have a problem, and that's why they're going back into their bylaw and trying to, get tighter control of what's going on. We don't know that.
Why don't we ask them?
And that's what you gotta,
Why don't we
there's always a bad apple. Bad apple falls from the tree. There could be somebody out you don't know. But we're just looking for safety for the neighbors, and we just want to make sure that there's some kind of control of this. But nothing major where you're not going to be able to do it, or they're going to take a lot of your rental away from you. We're not looking for that. We're just looking for safety, right? Am I right or wrong?
I'll be in North Adams on Thursday
Yeah.
having not this conversation, but that we ask these questions all the time when we're out with communities. So I'll definitely, that's one of
She's really good.
one of the questions on my list for sure.
I also think when we spoke, one of the topics we discussed was short-term rentals. If people if they were owner occupied
Yes.
or non-owner occupied.
Yeah.
Right,
And
yes.
that's, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah. So can I get a little background
Sure.
on that? So for example, I think Williamstown does this as well, but even places on the Cape and South County do this, where if you live in the home or on the parcel that you rent out, and you have maybe an ADU, you can rent that out basically as much as you want all year round. No one's going to come and ask any questions beyond the normal inspection process. But if you don't live there, if it's a place that you live in, maybe during the summer or in the winter, a season of a year, you are limited to how long you can rent that property out for. Typically it's like 90 days, so people can get kind of the prime summer season or the prime fall season, however you look at that. So if it's an owner-occupied property versus a non-owner occupied property, there's different rules. And again, why that is, I think the argument on the Cape would be something like, if someone's there full time, they look after the property. But I'm well aware that you just said that you rent the house next to where you live, so that argument falls apart maybe in that case. So, but that is another option of owner
I'm not on
occupied.
Airbnb. It's a long-term rental.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
sorry,
no.
yeah, okay. But that's kind of one of those other arguments that we could have of, if you live in Adams, can you rent out your place or a bedroom in your place all year round, versus if you don't live in Adams full time, what that looks like.
And you might want to limit the amount someone could have in town too.
Sure.
You don't want someone to have 6, 7, 8 short-term
Yeah.
rentals.
And some places also say it can't be like an investor-owned property. Someone can't buy up homes under a corporate name or something and then Airbnb everything out. And I'm saying Airbnb, but I mean just like short-term rental kind of, it's become a part of our parlance.
Right.
Well,
why don't you can go on with your presentation.
that was it. I just had this data and then I wanted to have
okay.
a conversation. I think I found the concerns, the spots of concern for folks. Let me look at my other questions here. I've talked to the town about capacity. I guess this is a question both for the board and for the public here. What would be the ideal outcome to a bylaw for you? What would be, a year after you've implemented this bylaw, what is kind of your best outcome?
Well, I think that something where what we're looking for is like the control of the amount of people that can be in one. Because there's always that chance you get somebody that tries to cram 10, 15 people in a home or something that you have for a short-term rental, say. And we just don't want to see a big party or something happen or someone get hurt. We're just looking for safety basically and looking out for the neighbors basically. And that's it, and it's good for the town to get people in town here that want to spend money and do sightseeing and stuff like that. That's really good for the town. And that's what we want. We're not trying to hinder you folks that do have short-term rentals. We're not trying to hinder you at all. I mean, we're just looking for an inspection for, say, smoke detectors and fire extinguishers and things like that. That's what we're looking for. We're looking to try and make sure that the neighbors are safe, and that's it. I don't know, what do you got?
Well, the inspection.
Yeah,
David
once a year.
Can add to this. It would be based on state minimum standards,
Mhm.
which are a requirement of
Anything.
long-term rentals. So we want to get the short-term rentals on the same playing field as the long-term rentals.
Okay, great. Anything to add to those?
No, it's basically that's it. I mean, you don't want to isolate. The playing field should be the same or equal across the board.
Yeah.
So if you're a short-term rental and long-term rental has to have all the inspection process, short-term rental should not be exempt from it.
Right.
So then to the community here, same question, which is, let's say something is implemented and then a year after, what's kind of the best outcome in your minds here? And I'll start with you, Adriana.
I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I think the reality with Airbnbs, and I have stayed in them all over the country, not a lot, but quite a bit, is that they do what's the word for it? Regulate, thank you. Like, there's all sorts of regulations that the person who's renting the home puts on the website. they have all kinds of restrictions for what they want for their home, because it's their property. And I think you'd be surprised that actually, I bet not a lot of problems happen. I mean, maybe if it's like a beachfront house that is clearly used for vacations for groups of friends or whatever. But I think that we would find in Adams that some of the problems that we're worried about actually probably just wouldn't happen. Because, I mean, I think probably long-term renters have parties that are problematic. I'm guessing almost more than short-term. And one of the things that I would want to see is not too much of a restriction on, like, say, 3 friends want to stay in one room in a house. I don't know that it's the same as if you live there long-term. If you're there for a weekend, you might be willing to like have 3 people in one room, whereas that might not be something that you would do if you were living there. In other words, people use them a little bit differently than they do use their home. They use it so that they, it's like a hotel room. You could compare it to a hotel room. Hotels will bring out a bunk, an extra bed if you want to have an extra person sleeping in the room. So flexibility is what I would hope to see, and no problems too.
I think you did answer the question with that first piece too, which
Yeah.
is that like the way that the planning board in the town can actually track those things is by having some sort of system where they know where folks are and that there aren't any issues, if that makes
Right.
sense. So I think that's
Yeah.
a great point.
And the trick is, like I said, that cannot be public information because
Oh, no.
Airbnb is really careful to have that not be public information.
And
I assume
that's fair,
Verbo
yeah.
is the same.
That just like you're not handing out information on landlords, are you?
Nope.
So they have to have the
Right.
same like privacy
Yeah.
that you would afford any homeowner. Like I can't see how much you pay in your property taxes or not. That's
Well,
all.
actually, you can.
Well,
It's on the
if you're
website.
behind or not, rather, is a different.
It's
No,
not.
so that you can look that up.
All of that
that's
is on the
fair.
website.
Okay. All right. None of those are good examples.
That's okay.
Yeah.
My point, I don't have an Airbnb, I just have an interest in it for all the reasons you folks do, neighbors, not having enough long-term rentals, that type of thing. But I know in my area, there's 2 that are big houses, and a lot of times it's people that have moved away and are coming back for the holidays to spend, with their families. So it does serve it, so I can see where there might be 10 cars there for Christmas dinner, but then they leave at 11 o'clock, it's
Yeah.
down to the people that came.
Yeah.
So I don't know that necessarily the number of cars maybe overnight.
Yeah.
But that was just
That's a good point.
that came
Yeah.
up, 10 minutes ago but I know in my area,
Yeah.
it's oftentimes Adams families that are, just coming back to the area.
Yeah. And parking is kind of famously hard to regulate, zone, all those things, but
In Adams, we have more than most places, so.
yeah.
And just to be clear, I don't have an Airbnb either, and I wouldn't want to have one. But I would want to use it for that reason.
Right.
If I'd love to have a family reunion, and I would probably rent an Airbnb for a weekend so that I could have my cousins all be there. Because
Only
you
if there's
can't-
10.
Only if there's 10, okay, I'll remember
Out
that.
of curiosity, does the manor still operate as a, it does not?
No, not no longer.
What's the?
It was the church.
Oh.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Go ahead.
Oh,
No.
I just, oh, sorry.
No, I didn't have anything else.
I do have a concern that this is chasing a small problem and missing bigger problems in town that would be in your purview, but there is a real positive thing that can come out of you having this discussion. So it's not my dream of what it looks like, but from the discussion, hopefully it'll bring out more examples of neighbors who are unhappy, who bring some problems to your attention. Because I tripped over one a couple weeks ago. A neighbor of a short-term rental was unhappy about something, and if that person continues to see stories that you're talking about, maybe they'll come forward. And if they don't, and you don't hear others, that also tells you something. But so having this conversation will get you some more information.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would also urge you to think about, are you chasing the easy, or are there bigger, more challenging things that really need your attention in town?
Well, there's always bigger things in town that needs attention.
One other thing we talked about was, it goes to finding out where the Airbnbs are, where the short-term rentals are. Are they in town, on town water and
Yeah,
sewer?
yeah.
Or are they outside of the fire district? And
It's a great
that's,
question.
that's another issue with water
Yep.
and septic.
Yeah, so I can explain this briefly and take questions on this too. So, if you're on sewer and public water, generally you don't have any issues. You're meeting state standards related to drinking water, and your sewer is flowing where your sewer needs to flow. Septic and private wells get a little tricky. Technically, if you're on a private well and you're a landlord for a long-term rental, you have to have water tests on file. Technically, whether that happens or not, you know. And so that's something that other towns have done. Is if you're a long-term renter and you're expected to do this, you should also be expected to do this if you're a short-term rental for like a water test, and those can be acquired, I think, cheaply and if not free from your state land grant in UMass. The other piece about septics, septics are sized by bedrooms, and so typically if you're renting a bedroom in a home that has a septic, you're not in any issue because you're not adding on to space. But when we get into like building an accessory dwelling unit that might be used as a short-term rental, you might have to look at expanding your septic based on state sanitary code, Title V, which is not a cheap thing to do. So, I add this to the conversation just to say, you could foresee a world where potentially someone doesn't want to expand their septic, but also wants to have a short-term rental, and suddenly their septic is kind of at its capacity and causing some environmental issues. That's the worst case scenario, but there does need to be some sort of conversation around public health considerations for water and septic. So that's a great point, Sandy, and one that other towns have dealt with in their bylaws. Yeah.
It is possible to get partial answers to some of these questions just through some brute force. There's a couple of major short-term rental companies. They list things that are currently available. You go onto the website, you type in Adams, and you say, I'm flexible on my dates, and you get a list of properties. They don't have the addresses, but they often have pictures. And I was able to very often figure out where these properties were before I was an expert in town.
Right.
Now that I'm here, I see pictures of people take pictures of Greylock, and just from the angle, I can figure out where your house is. It's not that hard. So because you're experts in the town, you can start to recognize where those are, and you can be like, oh yeah, those are all in the parts that are on septic. You might be able to get a partial sense. It's not data, it's not gonna make a nice chart, but you can get a good sense that way.
And we talked with Donna about this as well, where there's a site called AirDNA, which essentially scrapes data from all the major, like Vrbo, Airbnb, all the major short-term rental websites. And as a client, which is typically a municipality, they can provide a report to the town to say, this is how many different unique rentals are on your in your town. And that's one way, an early way to match it with, I think that's actually what North Adams did, and they saw a huge disparity with who was registered with the state and what their AirDNA data said. And I think that's why they're having that conversation. Don't quote me on that, as I'm being reported. But that's a part of that conversation for sure.
Yeah.
So there are ways to get this data.
And we're gonna have workshops on this, and you folks are welcome to come aboard and help us out, and anything you would like to add or you think we should have. So it's equal for everybody. That's the thing. You want everybody to just have the same rules, nothing really strict, but if it's the same for everyone, you come into the town, you go upstairs, say, I want to have a short-term rental. What do I have to do? Well, we've got something here. This is what you got to do. This, and that, and it's all black and white, and it's easy to do. They don't have to come before any boards or anything. They just go to the building inspector or whoever's going to be doing inspections and stuff, or even it would be Andrew here, right? They would come to you on this.
For inspections, it probably would be Dave.
Yeah.
Well, inspection would be David, right? I understand that.
But for registration.
But what I'm trying to say is that so you can come into the town hall, because you don't know. A lot of people don't know who's the building inspector and who's the health inspectors and stuff like that. A lot of people don't know that. But if we have something, this is what you gotta do, this is what you gotta abide by. it's gonna make it easier for everybody, in the town too.
I think this was a great start to the conversation. I know we're about at an hour, so I just
Yeah.
want to tell you my next steps here. And I ultimately work for the town, so I'll,
Well, we're really happy you came and.
yeah, happy to do this. Happy to have these conversations. I'll pass out my cards too if other folks want to have conversations about this generally. But my report back to you is, I've got some good information here based on what everyone has said. I think having some brief kind of basic language to give you of like, here's kind
That's
of a
what
draft
we're
of a
looking
bylaw.
for. Exactly.
And then let's get into the nitty gritty of like, does
Right.
this work for you? So this was a great first step and a great first conversation. I think we'll have many more.
Yeah, there's gonna be more, and whatever we come up with, it's gonna go to the selectmen, then the town meeting, then the Boston, if everything's passed, right? And then it'll go into our zoning. So there's a lot of steps we have to take,
Yeah.
and that's the way it's gonna be.
So then, will you come back to another meeting, or what?
Happy to,
what the
yeah.
plan
Great.
be?
Yeah, so, and this can look however you want it. So, in Sheffield, we had about 3 planning board meetings before we did all planning board meetings are open, but we had then a community listening session where we kind of presented the bylaw and then folks got to chime in. And then it's actually on a different town meeting warrant, it's not this spring. So we could do something like that. We could also just keep them in planning board sessions, that's fine too. It's really up, you guys are driving the ship here, so
And so
however
we're
you
taking
want
a
to.
good step here.
Yeah,
I like the listening session. I mean, we're not anywhere
No,
near
no.
that yet.
Yeah.
But, so another workshop.
I'll work
Yeah.
with Andrew to get on your agenda for sometime in June,
Okay.
if that's all right. And then we'll have some draft language for you then, and then we'll think next steps
That'll
after that. Does
Okay.
that work?
Okay, and then how would you suggest we contact, say, for instance, North Adams or Williamstown?
Well,
And would that be something you would do, or would we do it as a board, or
Good
to
question.
try to find out what's been working, what's not been
Yeah.
working?
that's kind of under. I assumed I would be doing that for
Okay,
you. If you
okay.
guys want, if you want to do that informally, that's more than happy. But
No,
just know
no,
that,
it's excellent. Andrew, say thank you.
just know that we're constantly having these conversations. So
Yeah, that's fine,
Um,
that's
that'd
fine.
be
It
great.
all goes to you, funnels through you, and you
Okay.
have all the,
That'll help us
collective
a lot,
data.
okay, good,
yeah.
good.
yeah, okay. All right,
Yeah.
great. Anything else?
No, I'm
Anything
good.
that you guys want me to look into? I mean, I
How about you folks? Do you have anything else, or?
Well, I'm curious how how the Great Barrington one has worked for them.
yeah.
I mean, if they're happy about what they did.
I have to go down there this week too. So
Because they may just be like, wow, this was not
yeah,
what we had hoped for.
yeah.
I mean,
Because they're about the same size as us, really.
Yeah, but a lot more Airbnbs, I'll tell you
and
that.
a lot more
Yeah.
tourists.
Yeah.
They have a lot more traffic down
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
than we do up here.
And the tourists
That's
are in
why
town,
we're-
just so you know. I've been
A
driving
lot less
trouble.
expensive to be up here.
And we should find out the tax rate. We should find out exactly
Sure.
what would be coming from this. for
Right.
taxes.
I'd like to know if the taxes that the town collected changed after they created the bylaw.
Mm.
Okay, great. And then also something along with that is how those taxes are used in the town budgets.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important conversation too. Some towns,
I don't know if they really show it, our budget shows the money coming in,
yeah,
but it doesn't say like we spent, 40% of it on this, it just, it's money coming in.
some towns use it specifically for housing initiatives. So like if they have an affordable housing trust that builds affordable housing or like promotes affordable housing, short-term rental impact fees, if you will, go towards like specific housing initiatives. So that's something interesting to kind of keep in mind too. But that, yeah. So just
They're
how
like
the taxes have
money.
changed.
Is that something that it gets incorporated into the bylaws?
Not necessarily, no. That would be a different conversation.
Are impact fees for that legal?
Sorry, I shouldn't have said impact fees. The taxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you did say.
I did
impact fees,
say,
and
yeah,
you-
yeah.
And you described impact
Yeah.
fees.
More the taxes that you would pay into the town, where those go. I think some towns have decided they're treating it kind of like
I know what an impact fee is.
yeah. That's why I use that term. So, but no, it's just straight taxes.
One other question, our, David contacted, our building commissioner, Brian Duval, and he sent back a memo, and he said he was also happy to attend a planning board meeting to discuss this as well. Would it be appropriate if he comes to the next meeting when you're here as well?
Absolutely, and I'd love to
Yes.
see that memo too. If
Okay.
That would be the next one too. The memo's in the packet if you wanna.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah.
Read it.
That would be great.
And then we can have everybody here at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
Just out of curiosity, because are you part-time? I guess I could just see where,
Part-time what?
building inspector or,
Code enforcement, I'm full-time.
oh, okay.
We have a full-time one now?
Building inspector?
Yeah.
No.
No, okay.
But that's probably
But
not gonna
he's,
be, it would be more the
he's
code.
code
Yeah.
enforcement,
Right.
he's Board of Health.
I could just see all those people having
Well,
to
Board of
get
Health would
inspected.
be
and
doing
then-
the inspection.
I don't know, would you be doing the inspections or would it be?
Yeah, I would think so, hey?
I do all the rental properties and all hotels and.
Doesn't the
So you'll be
fire,
doing short-term
What?
rentals?
doesn't the fire chief do the,
Yes, they do fire inspections.
yeah, so is that the?
Fire department, we the chief,
Yeah.
or whoever he designates.
So, could the next meeting have a way for people who aren't able to attend the meeting in person to be able to participate?
We can
I
set
know
this
there
up.
was a Zoom link, but then I know that they couldn't.
Yeah, we
there
couldn't
wasn't a
do
Zoom.
it because it wasn't advertised ahead of time.
So is that something that we maybe could have at the next?
Yeah.
With this discussion? Okay.
And again, our next meeting, you folks it's nice to have you here and get input from you.
Do you have dates? Or
Good
do you-
dialogue.
Andrew, do you have dates?
I don't have dates yet because Brian didn't respond, but probably early
Joe?
June. There's also a public hearing coming down.
That sounds good.
For
Yeah,
us?
Brian's on vacation,
Mhm.
Oh,
so he won't be back until next week.
okay.
And I'm just gonna give you my card here, just in case if any questions
Yeah,
come up or
great.
things that you want to know, let me know.
Thank you.
Um,
Who took Duke's place up there?
Duke,
You know, John Duval. At the.
oh, that's a good question, I don't know.
The director?
Yeah.
You mean, Mike, Tom Matuska. He was our
Well,
executive.
he's the director.
Yeah.
But what was it? Was he like a vice president or president or something? John
Was he
Duval?
in our commission?
Yeah,
So probably someone else from,
because he,
it's all appointed by your select board, so.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
Because I know he
it's a good question.
retired, so.
Yeah. And then if anybody else,
Can I be?
yeah, please.
I'm okay. I've got your name.
Okay, you got my name, you can find me.
Yeah, I do.
And please, feel free to
restaurants
reach
for
out to
Mauser
us.
Block.
I'm sorry?
Restaurants for the Mauser Block across the street.
Oh. See that? New
What was
business in
that?
town.
Oh, really?
Potentially.
Wow.
Well, that's good.
That's amazing. Huh.
You know, any kind of business is good.
Okay.
Okay, so-
All right, so we'll, I guess you'll be in touch with Andrew and then Andrew will
Take
touch
care
with
of
us
that.
on the
And
next.
we're okay. Is there anything else from the public here?
Just
Okay.
thank you for letting us participate.
Okay, that's good.
Appreciate it.
Okay, and hearing that, did we have any mail by chance?
Nope.
Okay, could I
Specific
have,
public comment related to this that's in the packet, but
sure,
not exactly mail.
Did you get?
okay.
Yes, it, yep.
And you can send it to us instead of on the phone, or is that possible?
I mean, it's an email I printed out and put into the.
Yeah, that would be good. We'll come pick it up.
Did you say you
What?
got
It's in-
comments?
It's in there.
It's in there.
Oh, it's in here already?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is the draft. Okay, good.
No, that's the-
Those are the minutes.
It's somewhere in
It
the.
must
It's
be
somewhere in the
right
packet.
there, right there.
Did you
Oh,
say there
okay.
were comments?
Oh, right here.
from people?
I see.
A
Okay,
comment
thank you.
that I got emailed this morning.
All right.
Afternoon.
Well, this was really good.
Can
And
we hear?
first step, and we'll have our next meeting, and we'll let everybody know. And
Mike, can we hear that comment?
Yeah, if you want to read it out, you can.
oh, read this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Short-term rentals from the planning board, from Brian Duval.
No,
Is
not
it-
that one.
Not that? I'm on the wrong one again? Paula Hayden?
You have it?
I am.
Yeah.
That's the one, right, from Paula Hayden?
Yep.
Okay, I got it. Okay, hi Andrew, I live in Cincinnati and was born and raised in Adams. I have family members and close friends that live in the area. 5 years ago, I purchased 16 Maple Street and have been traveling there about 5 times a year. I could not afford it if I did not Airbnb. Yeah. I have put $1,000 into it, renovations, and have people taking care of it while I am away. My taxes increased in 1 year almost $200 a month. The state of Massachusetts makes thousands off of me through the Airbnb rules every year. Every time I visit, another business closes in Adams and it is becoming a ghost town. I have guests stay for weeks who wants to stay in a motel that entire time. Why in the world would the town want to place restrictions on businesses and bring people in from all around the world and money into Adams? I have had guests from Japan, Australia, and many states from California to Maine. I have guests that have returned over and over because they absolutely love our place, location, and town. Seriously, why destroy the ability for others to experience Adams? The economy is tanking, and if you make it difficult for me to use Airbnb, it will sell immediately. I love the area, and I am sick to my stomach knowing appointed officials are turning Adams into a place where no one wants to visit. Please reach out to me with any questions. Our town needs to celebrate and come together to maximize its potential. Sincerely, Paula Hayden. And I went to school with her, so I know her well.
She had a hybrid meeting she would be joining, but that had to be changed kind of last minute.
You need the second one too, or
Yeah.
put it up?
That one's fine. You know.
Okay. And then another one. Hi Andrew, Paula again. I have relatives of area families come and stay to celebrate graduations, weddings, and have celebrations of life. I have sports teams that are competing against Williams State with us also. Where will they stay? North Adams, Williamstown, etc. Sure, let them benefit. And that's it.
How many people on that sport team staying in that house?
No, that's questions will come up. And we're not trying to make anything hard for you guys. We just gotta have something in the bylaws. Something so when new people come in and they buy a place and they wanna do the short-term rentals, they go to the town hall and this is what you gotta do. If we got it all written up for them, they'll know what they have to do. And it's a simple thing what we're asking. We're not trying to put restrictions on you, just to make sure things are safe and they up and up, that's it. Cause, yeah,
Just a
okay,
point
go
of
ahead.
information, I don't think, is there anyone here who has an Airbnb in Adams? I don't think so. Okay.
Do you have anything? There was another hand up.
Oh, was there a hand up? Oh, no.
I just fixed my glasses.
All right, so none of,
okay.
so none of us that are currently in attendance, that are asking these questions, have an Airbnb in town.
Right, I'd like to get some of them people in
Yeah.
here. That's what I like, and hear from them. That's what I would like to do, but I don't know where to start.
This meeting was posted on Facebook?
Yeah.
And
Nobody came before us, except you people, and you guys have been.
This gal's gonna have it on iBerkshires, so you wait till the next time, we're gonna have a lot of participation
Yeah.
from
Oh,
Airbnb.
And if
We
you have
might.
a Zoom link, you might have people too.
Right.
'Cause-
How come we don't put this in the Eagle anymore, when we have meetings? Is
Oh,
this?
this one we do. This one is not a public hearing.
Oh, okay, because it's, I see.
There's no
Because it's a
legal- there's no-
workshop.
yeah,
it
there's
don't
no
need
legal
to be.
requirement for
Why don't you give
workshops.
like 14 days notice and stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that was my only question. Anything else from anybody? Okay, that's good, and can I have adjourn? Somebody make a
Motion.
motion? Second. Motion second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is closed, and we will have another one in June.